Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Level Up Your Leadership Skills by attending NIGP's Leadership Summit, Leading for Impact. Today's panel includes Todd Slater, Rick Grimm, Carrie Koopman, Ralph Campbell, and Jay Caputo. If at any time during the webinar you need tech support, please send me a direct chat. Remember to engage with your peers by making sure you have your chat option selected to everyone. During the webinar, you can submit questions to the Q&A or chat, and we'll take those throughout. Todd, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, I would. Thanks, Justin. Welcome, everybody. Glad that you could join us today. And we're really excited to be here with you today as we bring you a little look into the Leadership Summit. The Leadership Summit is another new offering by NIGP. This is where we're bringing together a variety of our leadership offerings for our members. So we're excited to be able to join you. We have a number of speakers for you today, but I want to kind of toss it over to Carrie Koopman, who is our Leadership Committee Vice Chair. I work closely with her over the year and the committee as we put together the best in leadership development. So Carrie, I want to just turn it over to you.
Great afternoon, everyone. Just a little bit about the Leadership Development Committee. We are comprised of 14 amazing procurement professionals from very diverse backgrounds, very diverse career paths, entities. We are led by Ms. Lourdes Koss, our chair, and Mr. Todd Slater as our NIGP liaison. We meet monthly to discuss areas of growth and collaboration, needs, and the engagement that the Leadership Development Committee can bring forward to the NIGP family. We also discuss important topics and take a deeper dive into different target audiences, impacts, lessons, and then our goals. We spend a lot of time discussing lessons learned and the current state of procurement, and also what the future looks like for leaders. We spend a lot of time discussing leaders leading the next level of leaders. And that's something we seem to hone in on each time we meet. We look at what tools, education and support will they need, how will they rise to that challenge, and how do they gain that confidence? So for this year's Leadership Summit, the LDC brainstormed a lot of different ideas. We had a long list of topics that we tried to narrow down, and I think we got it down to the 3 themes. In the ever-changing world of procurement, we all celebrate our successes together, and we manage our challenges and hurdles through collaboration and networking. The committee felt that these 3 themes would be impactful to the attendees. So now I will turn it over to Mr. Rick Grimm to talk to you about the Leadership Summit.
Great, thanks, Carrie. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We have, I see 41 on the call, and hopefully that will grow as we're having this conversation, short conversation. I don't know about the rest of you, but in this kind of what they call the post-COVID world, I am constantly on the road. I'm speaking with chapters and collegial associations and folks that are in public procurement. And when I first started those conversations, the focus of the conversations were really limited on supply chain disruptions. But today, I hear very little about supply chain disruptions. The major focus is on talent disruptions and talent disruptions occurring across all positions, whether it's someone coming new into public procurement or it's someone who's in the kind of the mid-level wanting to move up into the organization, or CPOs are retiring. Great Resignation has had a major impact on that as well. So it really is, when we think about talent disruptions, I kind of thinking back to Economics 101, which is all about supply and demand. So one of the real tee-ups for this particular program is to really be part of that time in public procurement. I believe this is the best time to be in public procurement because of those talent disruptions. But it also means that you have to be able to invest in yourself. Now, what we've done throughout the last few years, we've dominated our portfolio on leadership offerings, really to help strengthen your opportunity, your career aspirations. We have the certificate program in leadership, the new certification, the NIGP CPP, focused on leadership. And now we have our first ever leadership summit, really kind of brings our 3 flagship leadership programs together in one event February 22nd to the 5th in St. Louis, Missouri. It brings together the areas of Chapter Academy, which is our top chapter leaders as they take over and are responsible for running their own nonprofit chapter organizations, working with volunteer leaders and budget, et cetera. Leaders Edge, which is for emerging leaders. And today we really want to talk about that third component, which is leading for impact. Now, I find that there's really 5 reasons why it's compelling that you be here. I talked about how you need to invest in your own profession. But here's the reality, folks. We know that today's environment, it's highly volatile, it's complex, there's all these dynamic changes, and you have to be prepared for all of those changes. Regrettably, sometimes when I'm out talking to folks, and I feel like we're in a Alice in Wonderland syndrome. And what I mean by that is, Alice is sitting there, there's multiple pathways to go, and she has a conversation with a Cheshire cat, and he's trying to help. He says, which way do you want to go? And she says, I really don't care. And he says, well, then it doesn't make a difference for you which pathway you take. I think for today's environment, if you're really going to take advantage of that opportunity to invest in yourself and to grow in your profession, it really is important that you are prepared for those dynamic changes. So that's the first of 5 reasons. The second is that this leading with impact for impact is really focused in on, as Carrie had said, 3 major themes that not only came out through the leadership committee. And again, Carrie, thanks for all you do. And Lourdes is actually our facilitator for the Emerging Leaders, the Leaders Edge program. But we really have identified 3 common themes, which I think is really critical to the work that we do. It's leading strategically and driving for results. It's about leading in times of change. And then that third area, which is absolutely, it's pervasive in all the conversations I have, it's about leading and building that talent. The fourth reason why you need to be with us in St. Louis is to meet those facilitators. We have exceptional facilitators. We're not going from within the public procurement community, but we know what we need in public procurement, but we also need to have those experts to come to this event to really talk to us about why leadership is so critical to the work that we do. And we're just really privileged to have this afternoon, Ralph Campbell, who's the president of Learning Optimized, and Jay Caputo, who's going to be part of that Leading for Impact in the afternoon. And Jay, you're the co-founder and lead trainer for 40 Associates International. So we really welcome you to this conversation. And I really want to start talking about how we have formatted this particular program. I believe we're having morning sessions. Ralph, you're going to lead that. So what do you see happening? What's the kind of format that you're going to use in these morning sessions?
Well, thank you, Rick, for having all of us here, and Todd and Carrie. Jay and I, we're excited, really excited to come to St. Louis. The format's going to be very, very interesting in the morning time because, Rick, you're talking about people, leaders needing to level up their learning to navigate the challenging, difficult times, the uncertain times that we live in today. And so one of the main topics in the morning is what we call vertical leadership or vertical development. And this is not a new word, but you're starting to hear more about it post-COVID. And so vertical development, just a simple definition, is elevating a person's ability to make meaning of their world in more cognitively and emotionally sophisticated ways. And if human beings can begin to make new meaning of this uncertain world we live in, wow, life doesn't get easier, but life gets a lot more manageable. And so what falls under vertical development is what we call success mindsets. And so I'm going to spend a whole morning on vertical development, the history of vertical development, argue why it's so important, why it's one of the top skills that we're being hired for to come in and teach, right? And it's measurable. So I'll talk about the case for vertical development, and then we'll spend time exploring mindsets. right? Mindsets, I'm sure many of you have heard or may have heard of a woman named Carol Dweck. She wrote the book in 1995 called Mindset. And most of the work after that, we stand on her shoulders. And I'm excited that I do a lot of work with a gentleman out of Cal State Fullerton, Dr. Ryan Gottfredson. And he believed that her work could be added to. And so some of your listeners know about Carol Dweck, growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Well, that's where she stopped. And many people came after her. And Dr. Ryan Gottfredson, he created this model where there's 4 pairs of mindsets that we all possess, and they're on a dimension or a continuum. And so in the morning time, we're going to get to explore what are those 4 pairs of mindsets, what are the jobs of mindsets, why do they work, what do they do, and prior to, participants are going to have an opportunity to take a free mindset assessment. So you actually can see where you are as a leader on what we have as these dimensions, right? So mindsets aren't linear. You're not fixed or growth. All of us are on a dimension or dimensions, and you're going to have an opportunity to see where you are. And then if I know where I am, I actually can do something about it. Because oftentimes as leaders, we're not getting that feedback that we need to see if we're going in the right direction. And as you said, the story you just shared, if you're not clear where you're going to be walking in circles, right? And so we're going to explore that. We're also going to give participants the mindset book, Success Mindsets. And the author, Dr. Gottfredson, just came out with a new book called The Elevated Leader, hence this idea about vertical development. And so we're going to explore that in the morning. And then we're also going to touch on this concept that I call the S-curve of mindsets. So if you think of an S-curve in business, when you're at the bottom of the S-curve, you're just starting out, right? You get to the top of the S-curve, great market share, things are going well. But most of us, if we're fortunate enough, we live in a sweet spot, and that's in the middle. And so we're going to talk about this whole S-curve of mindsets and how do you get from where you are to where you want to be. And so that's going to be the morning session on Friday.
And so, Ralph, you don't plan on coming and telling the participants the 10 ways to do public procurement?
No, sir.
Which is what we typically have. This is something radically different. This is about, and we've talked about this at NIGP, is that if we really think of just working on the procurement techniques, which are great, it's absolutely critical, we really don't think about how we bring those teams together in that dynamic change. And so the P word, procurement's not going to be really playing much of a process at the summit. It really is, the focus is on the L word, the leadership within those procurement teams. I am curious to know, when we think about the vertical relationships, people coming into organizations and teams are coming from different areas of understanding, different diversities, different cultures, and they're also coming not only from that kind of that social area, but also different generations. I understand now there's 5 levels of generations that are coming into the workplace. And then we add into there, just to throw it into the soup, this whole idea of remote work. So are you going to touch on some of those pieces in the morning session?
Yeah, we are. And it's some people said there's 6 generations now, so I can't keep up with it anymore, but there's a lot. And what this tells us, is that every human being or generation lives out of different norms. A lot of similarities, but we see in a lot of these different groups that we have these differences, but these differences would actually make us strong. And so one of our morning sessions, we're going to explore around diversity and equity and inclusion and celebrating these differences that you and I possess. But we're also going to get a little more granular, right? We're going to talk about not necessarily implicit biases, which we will, because you and I, all of us have them, but we're going to peel away, Rick, what's the neuroscience behind these blind spots or this unconscious biases, right? Or as one of my mentors, she calls implicit biases, the thumbprint of the culture on our brain, right? And so we're going to peel away and begin to have some fun and explore about how we're different, how we're similar, and how these are actually constructed. And so I think that's going to be
Interesting.
a fascinating approach, because most times we talk about implicit bias, but I rarely hear people go, well, how are they actually constructed in the 100,000 neurons in my brain? Take
Yeah.
the personality away from it, good, bad. That's not what Jay and I are going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how they're constructed. And if you understand how something's constructed, then guess what? You can reverse engineer yourself.
Right, right. And I understand that these morning sessions are going to be all three components of the leadership. So it's not just leading for impact folks, which is really geared to that, that seasoned leader, but it's also the emerging leaders that Lourdes is leading through Leaders Edge, and also the chapter leaders. So you have a different dynamic. I actually think that that's one of the 5 reasons why this summit is so critical, is that you actually have that opportunity to network with other leaders who are attending for different reasons, but with the same kinds of conversations, and that probably enriches that morning experience. Do you think, Ralph?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Bringing everybody together, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Jay, let me shift to you. So you're going to be, of course, you'll be with Ralph in the morning, but your focus is really going to be on those kind of the afternoon sessions where we're only in the leading for impact areas, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I find that first one is leading strategically and driving for results. So again, I go back to wearing my procurement hat. What we typically think about leadership is, how do we convert a requisition into a contract, into purchase order? How do we do methods of source selection? And people would say that is a strategy. But when you talk about leading strategically and you talk about driving for results for us have been that everyone gets what they want. The contracts are all executed. But what does that mean differently from your lens about how you lead strategically?
Yeah. So this introduces a really important question when it comes to leadership development. A lot of the work that we've done for corporations, over the past few decades, we find that especially in large organizations, and this is true whether it's public or private, is that people elevate into leadership positions because they were effective at producing results on the front line. And the thinking is that because they could produce results on the front line, in other words, they knew the 10 ways to do procurement, for example, or whatever, however many ways there are. I don't know if there are 10 or 12 or whatever the number is. They were good at doing it because they could produce those results. The thinking was, well, they're going to be able to lead people at doing the same thing. And that actually is proven untrue time after time after time, because the skills and the competencies of leadership are different than the skills and the competencies of being able to accomplish something on the front line, so to speak. So what we're going to be really focused on in all three of these areas, whether it's the leading strategically and driving for results, or managing and addressing change, or developing other people and identifying and building talent, it has to do with the competencies of leadership that are about the relationship. There's a difference between strategy and tactics. There's a difference between context and content. So we can tell you what to do, but if we try to tell you what to do outside of a context of what leadership actually is, what strategic thinking really is from a leadership perspective, then whatever you do is going to be short-lived. It's not going to be sustainable. So we're talking about leadership that's sustainable because it brings into the equation the unknown, and the unknown is the human factor, the people factor. And that's why what Ralph is going to be doing in the morning is so fundamental and critical to everything that I'll be doing in the afternoon, because, everything begins with a context. So with a context of vertical development and the right mindsets and the understanding of differences, when we get into the sort of the nuts and bolts of strategy and strategic thinking and decision making, the 5 phases of decision making as an example, or the ways in which when people are involved in change, why they resist change, what that resistance is really about, how to be responsive to that resistance. So all of that will make more sense in the context of the things we'll be covering in the morning sessions.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the format you're going to use in the afternoon. Is it a lot of Jay at the top, talking head, and we take copious notes and then we go and have drinks in the lounge, or how do you see this all playing out?
Well, the actual delivery in the afternoon sessions won't be, for the ones that I'll be leading in the afternoon, won't be that much different from the ones that Ralph will be leading in terms of structurally or the format. In other words, we're going to present information, but we're going to engage people and have people jump into the conversation. Some of it will be in small group exercises or activities or conversations. Sometimes the small group will be just one person, like two people, a dyad. Sometimes it's the people at your table. So we'll engage people as much as possible. It's really, it's a blending of lecture, a blending of conversation, a blending of exercises and activities. So the time actually kind of flies by because we pack it with so much that's relevant and useful. And that's really, that's our intention from the outset, is that people can walk away with not only the, what to do part, the tangible stuff, like I can start acting on this in this way, I can measure this, but also the attitudes from which the actions make more sense, the mindsets and the ways to see the world, the ways to see a situation that might be new, or might be an expansion of something that somebody has already been exposed to previously. Some of what we'll be covering won't be new, some of it will be brand new, but it's going to fit nicely and it's going to lead to actionable takeaways.
Yeah, Jay, that third element, which is, the identification and that building of your talent is, again, that's been a pervasive theme for the last 6 months when I've been out talking in the network. And one of our listeners is asking whether you're also going to focus in on that leadership of remote workers, because that's a different dynamic. Does that fit into either one of your presentations, Ralph or Jay?
Yeah, we're not going to spend too much time at, looking at the differences in terms of in-person versus remote, but there are certainly implications with what we're going to be covering and how you would approach a remote team versus a team that you're with in person. So it comes back to the quality of relationship and the quality of communication. And when you have the things in place that, especially the stuff that's Ralph's going to be covering on mindsets, it'll just make your remote work easier and more seamless, more intuitive. Some of the things to do will make a lot more sense. So, even though we're not going to be going through a lot of nuts and bolts of do this in a remote world versus don't do this in a remote world, the translation can easily be had with the things that we will be covering.
Yeah, let me press on that just a little bit, because a lot of times we think about, management is that ability to kind of walk around in the office. That's how we manage things. And when I look at the context of the areas, the themes that you plan on talking about, you actually don't use the word man. I don't see manager anywhere at all. It's all about coaching. How is coaching different than managing?
Well, so coaching is one competency within the umbrella of managing or leading. I don't even really use manager as much as I use leader, because the reality is the people you're managing are looking at you as the leader, right? So they may call you the manager, they may call you the boss. We recommend you get rid of the word boss, because it doesn't have the connotation that leads to a better relationship, the kinds of relationships that the managers and leaders want to have with their individual contributors. But within the umbrella of leadership or management, coaching is one hat that you wear. Another hat you wear is to delegate. Another hat you wear is to educate. Another hat you wear is to solve problems or to deal with conflict. Sometimes you might feel like a therapist when you're managing people. Sometimes you feel like a cheerleader because that's what they need. So there's all these different hats you wear. The coaching hat is the one that I find is the most misunderstood. It's collapsed with other things that you do in leadership that involve telling people what they need to know. When you're coaching, you're actually not telling people what you know or what you think they need to know. What you're doing is you're listening differently and you're asking questions. And that's what we're going to explore. First of all, that there is that difference, but how to do that difference well. And so you'll know when to put on the coaching hat and when to put on one of the other hats based on what you perceive is needed in the moment.
Yeah. These are fascinating topics, and I really appreciate that ability to not only give the kind of the overview, a little bit of a two or three elements to think about, but that you're actually going to engage the audience, which is why we identify this as kind of a smaller. A lot of listeners that are part of this webinar have gone to NIGP's forum. Well, that's sometimes 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 people. This is a much smaller, more concentrated on individuals that can get together and really learn from you, the two of you, but then also learn how to apply. You walk away from St. Louis equipped with tools. I know that we're getting down towards the end. I have a lot of questions and only three minutes left. So what is the one compelling reason, both for you, Jay, and for Ralph, why attendees should be with us in St. Louis?
I have two, not one, Rick.
Okay.
One, we are honored to have the top management thinker in the world will be joining us live via Zoom. Her name is
Wow.
Dr. Amy Edmondson. She teaches at the Harvard Business School. She's best known for the social construct, psychological safety. And so Amy is going to join us 15, 20 minutes, maybe even longer, and she's going to be able to do a Q&A. What is psychological safety? And she wrote a book called The Fearless Organization. So all participants will get this book as well. And Amy's really going to lead some powerful insights about how we can be with each other in a way where people feel safe. The second, Dr. Gottfredson in the Success Mindset Model, he won't be there, but he will be making a video. And what he's going to be speaking about in the video, everybody prior to the conference will be able to take their mindset assessment. What he's going to do is speak about all the group as a collective, what's he seeing in the mindsets of your profession. So he's going to get granular. Is your profession more open-minded than closed-minded, more fixed in growth? What are the opportunities as the profession to level up your leadership? And so many professions have trends. And so we have Dr. Edmondson coming, talking about psychological safety. And then we have Dr. Gottfredson doing a collective NIGP group mindset report. So those are my two reasons.
That's great. I thought we were doing fantastic with just the two of you. We're actually taking this to a whole different level. Hey, Jay,
Oh, yes.
about what's the compelling reason to be with you?
So my first one would be that the only constant is change.
Yeah.
And we all know this intuitively, but we're going to explore just how important that idea is for leaders to understand what really goes on in the face of change and what the needs are from leadership in terms of being responsive to change, and then how to do it well. Secondly, if there was one skill that leaders could possess that would make perhaps the biggest difference in the people's lives that they're leading, it would be coaching. The ability to know not only what it is, but how to do it well. Because when you coach well, what you build with other people, what they get to build is greater self-reliance, independence, creativity, and autonomy. All of what leaders ultimately want, especially managers of others, what they want, those are the skills that they want. And that you gain that, you create that through coaching.
Right. Yeah. So, a lot of times when we go to conferences, we're just feverishly writing things down. That whole application, that hearing the techniques, the competencies, the skills that you need to develop, and then be able to practice them in St. Louis in these smaller groups, and then to be able to go out back, when you fly back home, that's such an enriched experience. So I am just absolutely thrilled. This is our first ever, by the way, folks. We've never brought these three big flagship programs together, and it's going to be a fantastic time in St. Louis in February. I saw that Justin sent out the link to our website where you can get more information or register. Todd, let me just turn it back to you because I know we're out of time. Any final thoughts?
Yep. No, first, I really appreciate all of you guys being here today. I think you guys will tell. We're excited about this event. Again, first time, but it's going to be a great session. It's been great to work with Jay and Ralph and Carrie and the committee to bring this to everybody. Rick, we have, registrations open until January 20th, and then we kind of have to get ready for the event. So you have plenty of time. I'm always available if you have further questions about attending and what that looks like. Happy to answer any questions or talk further with you. But we're, again, looking for a great 2.5 days. The other thing, Rick, we have a lot of networking built in, right? Networking is critical, right? So we can bring these people together, have these conversations. So we have given enough room, enough white space to be able to have time at lunch. So we'll be sharing lunches together and having conversation. And we'll also have some fun, right? Rick, Saturday night, we're having an event at the hotel. This is a fabulous hotel. I think this is a great place, but you will be able to come together for a nice dinner and a fun evening activity. I won't release what that is. So, but it'll be a nice time. So a really good mix. So
Great. No excuses,
there any-
folks. No more
Yeah,
Alice in Wonderland. You got to get there. Know your pathway. Jay and Ralph, I'm just so excited to meet you in St. Louis. Carrie, thanks for your leadership with the committee. Todd, as always, your leadership on our team. I wish everyone the very best of the holidays. Can't wait to see you in February and continue to be brilliant in public procurement. Thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Happy
Take care.
holidays.
Happy holidays.